my first time giving a sermon. Hold your applause. Well, firstly, I'd like you to close your eyes and allow the story to resonate with you if you're able. I'm going to read from John chapter 2, verse 1 to 12. On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been given wedding invitations. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied. "My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 80 to 120 litres. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet." They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, "Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now." What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory. After this, he went down to Capernaum with his mother and brothers and his disciples. There they stayed for a few days. You can open your eyes again now. So we're at a wedding, and we can assume that Mary, Jesus' mother, has some attachment to the wedding party. She is maybe close friends, possibly relatives, and Jesus and his disciples have also been invited. So immediately, Mary's got an intimate investment in this wedding. So when something goes wrong, she's immediately attentive to it. And when I say something goes wrong, this is a big thing to go wrong. If we ran out of wine at a wedding today, a few people might complain, we might be a bit annoyed, but back then it was a serious social faux pas, a big no-no. Because weddings were not, in the first century, were not just about the two people getting married. They were about two families coming together. So the social dynamics were a lot more intense and comprehensive. There could have been a loss of family honour, family status for running out of wine. It was not uncommon even that a lawsuit could be taken out against the bridegroom and his family, who would be in charge of the food and drink for the festivities, which should last 7 days in a Jewish wedding. So it was a big deal to run out of wine. Mary's response is to go straight to Jesus, something I think we could all probably get a little better at. I know I could. She presents him with the problem, and to be honest, his response is a little hard to swallow at face value, at least for us today. In verse 4, his reply is, "Woman, why do you involve me? My hour has not yet come." Now, is Jesus just being downright rude and dismissive? It kind of sounds like it to us today. Because I don't know about you, but if my mum came to me with a problem and I said, "Woman, why do you involve me?" Well, most of you know my mum and you can imagine her response. But for those of you who don't, well, she wouldn't tolerate that kind of disrespect, let me tell you. So it's worth clearing up, I think. And I looked into the original Greek translation of what Jesus says. And firstly, woman, it's not a term of disrespect back then. It was not meant to be disparaging. It was in fact very respectful. Jesus uses the same term to address Mary again when he's at the cross. And he says, "Woman, behold your son." Or again, another example, Mary Magdalene, when she finds the tomb empty, the angels, they addressed her, "Woman, why are you crying?" It's not disrespectful, it's gentle. And the second part of what he says, "Why do you involve me?" Again, seems kind of out of character for Jesus, a little bit dismissive. So I looked again into the original Greek translation, And an easier way of understanding what he's trying to say might be closer to, my concerns are not the same as yours. So Jesus is telling Mary his concerns are not the same as hers. And I think both by saying this and not calling Mary mum, because although he's not being disrespectful towards her, he's also chosen not to say mum. And I think it's a gentle reminder for Mary of who he really is and whose business he's about. He's the Son of God. His identity is not Son of Mary, it's Son of God. And his business is the Father's business, God's business. His concerns are for our salvation. Mary's concerns were for the social embarrassment of a loved one. I think it's also really important to note here that how keenly aware Jesus is that this miracle, this being the first miracle, it will be what sets him on the path to the cross. There's no turning back from that. By performing this miracle, he's going to ruffle a few feathers, and it will set him on the path to Calvary. Hence he says, my hour has not yet come. And yet he still intervenes. Jesus cared about what mattered to Mary. And God cares about what matters to us. He is other. He is heavenly minded. His concerns are different to ours, but he is not indifferent to our day-to-day. He cares about what matters to us. And so Jesus chose for a simple Jewish wedding to be where he revealed his glory for the first time and saved a family from unnecessary embarrassment at the same time. He cares about what we care about. So, how was the turning of water into wine revealing God's glory? What was it pointing to about Jesus? In verse 11, we read, what Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory. And I think John uses the word sign instead of the word miracle deliberately. He wants us to see beyond the miracle to its significance. He wants us to ask ourselves, what does the miracle reveal about the miracle worker? And I think the how of this miracle is really key to answering that question, because John goes into great detail actually about how Jesus did this. In verse 6 to 9, nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water. So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet. They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had now been turned to wine. Jesus used these specific jars to make a point, I believe. These were the very jars used for ritual cleansing at that time. Uncleanliness was seen as being directly connected to sin or wrongdoing. It was widely believed to be the reason that God could not be present among his people. It was their sin, symbolized by their uncleanliness. And so the law keepers, the Pharisees at that time, they became extreme in their efforts to make people outwardly clean so they could be considered inwardly clean of sin or impurity or wrongdoing. These jars were a constant symbolic reminder of the immense gap between God and his people. So what did Jesus do? He took the water of guilt habitual failure, and legalism, and he transformed it into the wine of forgiveness, victory, and joyful obedience. The water of guilt, habitual failure, and legalism is transformed by the risen Jesus into the wine of forgiveness, victory, and joyful obedience. Wine is largely symbolic of blood in the Bible, and Jesus allowed his blood to flow like wine so that we would be able to bring our mess, no matter how entrenched we are, to lay it before him, and by his blood we are absolved. By his blood we are forgiven. By his blood we are transformed. And I can personally vouch for the incredible transformative power of Jesus. If you had told me this time last year that I would be stood before you today, well, I would have laughed in your face. Or if you would have told me, or anybody that knew me a year and a half ago, that I would even be at church, not a chance. For argument's sake, let's go back 2 years. God was the furthest thing from my mind. And if you'd have brought him or anything about the church up to me, I would have had some very unpleasant things to say. And yet here I am before you today because of him, because of Jesus, believing every word that I'm saying, passionate about what God has to say, passionate that here today you might recognize the transformative power of Jesus Christ. That should you invite him into your hearts if you haven't yet, his transformation will be just that, transformational. Let Jesus transform you and don't turn back. Life with Jesus is a life of abundance. Let's just take a look back at this miracle. He didn't just make enough wine to last the rest of the wedding feast, which, as you remember, would have been 7 days long. These jars would have held 75 to 130 litres each. That's 450 to 678 litres in total. More than enough. We have a God of abundance. We have a God of more than enough. Life with Jesus is a life of abundance. Not materialistically, not financially, but in joy, in purpose, and in certainty. However, as lots of us will know, that doesn't mean it's a life free of pain or suffering either. In this life, there will always be obstacles to our faith, and that can cause us to doubt. And I can significantly remember the first time I intentionally turned away from God. The second time is for another sermon. I'd like to read you a little extract from my testimony. We moved back to England from West Africa when I was 15. The longer I spent in England, the further away God seemed to get. I can remember writing in my prayer journal every night, pages and pages, begging God to allow his presence to be felt. But it all seemed in vain. God got further away and I got sadder. The connection I felt before had vanished, and in its place a dark depression grew. I so desperately disliked my surroundings, my situation, and more than anything, myself. If the God who I believed loved everyone unconditionally could abandon me, then I must truly be worthless. my depression got worse, and it was joined by bitterness and anger. And eventually I made the conscious decision to turn from God, saying to him, if you don't want me, then I don't want you. Now, I hadn't identified it until I prepared for this sermon, but I've now realised the role that doubt played in that moment. I let my circumstances cause me to doubt. I doubted his love, I doubted his goodness, and I let my doubts be the end of my faith for a long time. See, doubt is not just in the mind. It's not just the intellectual question of whether or not God exists. Doubt is also in the heart. It's our life experiences that can cause our hearts to doubt God's goodness, to doubt he could ever be loving, to doubt he's there for us. I'd like to take a look at a couple of verses. Verse 11 again. What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. For me, what's interesting here is that the disciples, who Jesus called in the previous passage, Simon Peter, Andrew, Philip, and Nathanael, they all responded by immediately following Jesus and declaring that he is the Messiah. And yet it's only after Jesus performs the miracle that John writes they believed. Similarly, in the next passage over, verse 22, after he was raised from the dead, his disciples recalled what he, Jesus, had said. Then they believed the scripture and the words that Jesus had spoken. I don't think John is writing anything here unintentionally, so I must ask myself, what is his intention? Did the disciples just not truly believe in Jesus before the miracles and then after? I think what it shows is that faith is a journey. Faith grows and belief grows. It ebbs and it flows. It's a journey. It's not that the disciples didn't believe before the miracle, but that their belief deepened at what they witnessed. Their belief grew. Doubt is a natural part of faith. It's a part of the journey. Sometimes we can feel ashamed and unable to admit that we have questions and doubts. We're worried about what people will think about us. Fear can also keep us from bringing our questions and doubts to God. Who are we to question the King of Kings, right? But just as Jesus did not turn away from the disciples when they had questions and doubts before and after the miracle, and forevermore after, he will not turn away from us when we have doubts and questions. So don't let doubt be the reason that we turn away from him. Don't let doubt be the end of your faith journey, as I did 12 years ago, and again 3 years ago. Let Jesus transform you, and don't turn back. Keep following. Keep asking. The transformation that Jesus brings is truly enriching. From insipid, flavourless water to wine bursting with such flavour that even the master of ceremonies, a wine connoisseur, he had to pull the bridegroom aside to comment on the superiority of it. Life with Jesus is life to the fullest. It's life to the brim, guys. So we're going to take a moment now to respond. got a video of a song that I'd like us to listen to. And I just want us to reflect on these things. That what matters to us matters to God. God cares. He isn't indifferent. That life with Jesus is life to the fullest. It's life bursting with flavour. And don't let doubt be the reason your faith journey ends. It's only part of the journey. Let Jesus transform you, and don't turn back. Lord, I pray that you would be working in the hearts before you. Father, would you move? Would you transform? And let them know that you do not look down on them for doubt. You do not look down on us for our doubt, Lord.